Welcome to the Rusted Garden Homestead. This video is all about helping pepper plants that are struggling. When peppers are small, I get asked a lot of times, how do I help my pepper plant? It's small, it's yellow, it's producing fruit, it's not thriving. The answer? Nitrogen, nitrogen, nitrogen. That's it. That's what they need. Nothing special, nothing fancy. For whatever reason, other peppers in your garden may be doing well. The peppers that you put in a specific spot may be struggling a little bit. These are nice and green. They're smaller. They still need nitrogen. You notice there's a pepper on there. I'll talk about, do you remove that or not? It's really up to you. Over here is an experiment where I'm growing in wood pellets. There's no nutrients in there. These have had a little bit of nitrogen, but they are yellow because they don't have enough fertilizer. And specifically when small, fish emulsion gives them nitrogen. That's all you need to do, and I'll talk about how you apply that. We'll go through a lot of examples in the garden. The other thing you have to consider is sometimes the variety of pepper. Some of these are bell peppers, they're smaller. They were planted the same time as the peppers over there, which are anchos or poblanos. The poblanos are naturally taller and grow faster, so sometimes your plants are going to be a little bit smaller. So the plants in here are doing well, nice and green. They are small. They were struggling. They were a little bit on the yellow side. I gave them fish emulsion every 7 days over the last 2 weeks. They look great now. Now, once you give them enough nitrogen, they're going to green up. Leaves are going to get bigger. If they're, being attacked by pests and disease, sometimes that stronger leaf fights that problem off. Then the question is, do I remove the pepper? It's up to you. That pepper is not going to hold your plant back once you give it nitrogen. If this plant was struggling for fertilizer, and again, specifically what? Nitrogen. I don't want you putting in Epsom salt, secret ingredients, all kinds of different things. Nitrogen. So, you could pull that off if you want. You could let it grow. It's not going to matter once your plant has what it needs to take off and thrive. Let me show you some other examples of pepper plants. This is my row of peppers, green, large, doing well. Bottom line, when I planted them, they got fish emulsion. I kept that up every week or two, depending on how they were struggling. Maybe for a month or so. Once they were green and growing, cut back on the nitrogen. They did get a handful of organic granular thrown in there several weeks ago. Just keep a steady supply of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Other elements, other fertilizers are important, but I'm going to keep stressing it because I don't want people spending money on things they don't need. This is a nitrogen issue. Give it to your plants, your peppers will look like that. The plants over here are nice and tall. They were struggling. They got the fish emulsion. The peppers on the bottom were there when the plants were small and struggling. I left them on. Now I have nice peppers to harvest and plants that are growing. Okay, let me show you how to set up the emulsion and feed them. You could use chemical fertilizers, you could use other organic fertilizers, anything with a higher nitrogen, 5 or higher. For whatever reason, you may have pepper plants that struggle, or tomato plants. This holds true. Doing this process, giving them nitrogen, works for any plant in your garden. When I show you how to use the fish emulsion here and the fertilizers, I'm going to show you some tomato plants that are doing really well, and then talk about a video that I did that showed what they looked like when they were struggling, and you can watch that. It's in the video description. So in the container mix here is a product that I've been testing out. It has more wood in there. It's a lot of shredded wood. When your potting mixes have shredded wood, wood tends to pull nitrogen from the plants, and the plants can struggle. It just happens to be going on here. These plants are small. They've been in here for well over a month. They're just not taking off. You can see the little fruit. Take them off, leave them on, it doesn't matter. Give them nitrogen. So we have the organic fertilizer. I do recommend using fish emulsion. That's a 5-1-1 NP&K, 5% nitrogen, 1% phosphorus, 1% potassium. There's other micronutrients in there. You can also use the processed fertilizers, which are often called chemical fertilizers. Everything on the planet's a chemical. You can't have fake nitrogen. This is Miracle-Gro. If you're going to use Miracle-Gro, Plant Expert, Vigoro, any of the chemical types, in quotes, use them at half strength because they have 24% nitrogen. That's too much. Just do 1 tablespoon per 2 gallons instead of 1 tablespoon per gallon. That's plenty of nitrogen. So what these are going to get, fish emulsion, I just want to show you how I put it in there, how much I give them. Let's just say this is day 1. We are soaking in the fish emulsion on the leaves. These are water-soluble fertilizers. Let's give them a little more. Water-soluble means the plant can use the fertilizer, the phosphorus, potassium, nitrogen, immediately. So it's going to pull the nitrogen into the plant right away. In here, we're going to use the chemical fertilizers, which I like to say processed, because there's no fake chemicals. You can't make fake elements like nitrogen, etc. These are just processed by people. Let's give the scientists some credit for the work that they do. And then over here, and if this is, you know, truly an emergency, say a lot of your crops are having trouble, I wouldn't pick one or the other. I would put in the fish emulsion, and then I would hit them with the processed fertilizers, often called chemical fertilizers. Let them go for a week. You're going to see them green up. Again, in a week, do the same process. By the second week, these should be taking off. Do it a third time. This way you know they're established with the nitrogen, and then you can go on to a regular feeding routine. A regular feeding routine when peppers are younger would be every 2 weeks with the water-soluble fertilizer. When they get larger, like the plants I showed you a minute ago, you don't have to give them as much nitrogen. Just slow and steady granular feedings over the season. You don't want to give them more nitrogen when they're bigger because they tend to produce too many leaves. You want them to go a little bit more into fruit production. But this is how you rescue your pepper plants. This is going to work. You don't need to buy any fancy things. If you want to put in some Epsom salt, well diluted, you can do that. If you want to use worm casting tea, which I recommend, you can do that. If you want to use kelp extract, you can do that. But you don't need those specialties to fix the plants. You must put in a good dose of nitrogen. All right, let's go look at those tomatoes I was talking about. Just wanted to show off this little guy. This plant was started indoors November 24th. Today is the last week of June. It was put into this root pouch on February 22nd. It's been staying small because there's not a lot of soil, so it gets root bound. You get a little bonsai plant. But it has a mature red pepper on there. It's a cubanelle, it's a sweet pepper. And I've been keeping this alive just by giving it fish emulsion. Anytime that I go out in my garden, I come in here, plants out here getting it, it gets a little bit of fish emulsion. So you can see how well it can maintain a plant even in a small pouch. Not great for production, but it's green, it has lots of leaves, and it's producing peppers, nitrogen. The 4 tomatoes along the cattle panel, this is a cherry tomato hedge, they were all struggling over a month ago. Soil was a little bit cold. That's the other thing. If your soil is not into the 50s, you want 50-degree soil, 60-degree soil for your tomatoes and peppers and most of your summer crops. So your plants can struggle if the temperature of the soil is too low, if you're just getting started, but it's not going to hurt to add in the nitrogen. These were struggling. I'll link the video description. They were small, they were yellow, they weren't thriving. Did the nitrogen trick, warm weather came, tomatoes took off, everything is fine. No other amendments were put in there. These were also peppers that were struggling a little bit, but you can see, you know, how well they're doing. Again, this is a pepper plant that just gets larger, planted the same time as the 2 right here. These are not struggling. That's just the nature of the plant compared to that variety right there. Okay, let's go back to where we started and we'll conclude. Plants don't care what form of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. They don't care what kind of fertilizer you give them. Organic fish emulsion, then we came up with these labels. We called these chemicals and tried to make people think chemicals are bad. Everything is chemical. Then we called these synthetic. And people thought, well, it's fake nitrogen. You can't have fake elements. It's not possible, or we would have all this fake gold. These are just chemicals that are processed by people into a form that the plants can use. If you use this for an emergency basis, use it on the plants here, which I'm going to do. There's no soil life in my experiment here. This is just basically sawdust. But even if you use this, the processed fertilizers, in your garden, a couple of times, you're not killing off the soil life, you're not damaging your plants. Perfectly fine to use however you want to use it in your life. Fish emulsion is just effective, and it's not that expensive. Soak it in. And the same thing, in your containers, if you want to use any kind of fertilizer you want, that's up to you. But you don't have the perfect soil life in here compared to your earth beds too. So I don't want that myth that the synthetic, chemical, processed fertilizers wipe out and kill soil life. It is true if you use it day after day after day after day on mass farming levels. You don't bring in compost and all that. All right, enough of my soapbox. The reason I said that is you don't have to just use fish emulsion. The point is get your plants nitrogen, whatever you can afford, whatever you want to use. Use it every week for about 3 weeks. Your plants will take off. If you want to leave the little pepper on the plants, that's perfectly fine. I have recommended removing them in the past. It's really up to you. That pepper will mature, this plant will get bigger, and I'll have a nice pepper harvest. Thanks for watching. Please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com, and please subscribe. I'll show you how I take care of every plant in my garden. Thanks for watching.